Let's picture a vampire. What's the first weakness that comes to mind? Sunlight, of course. But what if I told you that the whole vampires burn in the sun thing is actually a relatively new idea, and that the original vampire stories had a built-in exception? No, I'm not just talking about Blade. I'm talking about Dhampir, a creature from old Balkan folklore. So let's not waste any time and get started. Before we go into our explanation, we have a very small request. If you like our content, please support us by subscribing to our channel. This is a small click for you, but for us, it means a lot. Thank you. Let's begin. Origins and folklore. Let's head over to southeastern Europe, to the regions we now know as Albania, Serbia, and Bulgaria. Long before Hollywood got its hands on vampires, people here were telling stories about them. And in these old tales, the vampires had needs. The folklore says that male vampires had a serious thing for human women. They'd often sneak back from the grave to visit their widows or other women they were into. The stories got so common that some women would even blame a surprise pregnancy on a vampire ex-husband. And when a vampire and a human had a kid, the result was a Dhampir. The name itself, Dhampir, is really cool. It comes from the Albanian language, and some people think it might be a mashup of the Albanian words for tooth and to drink. Pretty on the nose, right? So, what's it like being a Dhampir? For the most part, you were a totally normal person. You could eat regular food. You weren't thirsty for blood. And most importantly, you could walk around in the daylight without any problems. But you had one heck of a superpower. You see, the vampires in these legends could often make themselves invisible, but a Dhampir could see them, clear as day. This made them the perfect natural-born vampire hunters. It was often a family business, passed down from father to son for generations. Now, the legends kind of disagree and get a little wild here. Some stories say Dhampirs just had dark, untamed hair and were unusually brave. But other Bulgarian tales get way more specific and weird. They said a Dhampir might be worn with a soft, jelly-like body, with no bones or even fingernails. Or they might have a deep mark on their back that looked like a tail. It wasn't always a very glamorous look. Now, where did the whole sunlight is deadly rule come from? All thanks to the 1922 silent film, Nosferatu. That movie was the first to really show a vampire being destroyed by the sun, and the idea was so dramatic that it just became a trope. And does any of this sound familiar? A half-vampire, half-human hero who hunts his own kind and isn't afraid of the sun? Yeah, pop culture loved this idea. Blade from the Marvel Comics is the most famous example, but there's also Alucard from the Castlevania games, and even Rain from the Blood Rain series. They all pull from this ancient Balkan legend of a kid with a vampire dad who decides to fight back. Core characteristics and abilities. We all know who Blade is. The cool trench coat, the sunglasses, the sword. Almost looks like the Terminator. How is he, as a Dhampir, so different from the creatures he hunts? The whole idea behind a Daywalker like Blade is that he was born a hybrid, part human, part vampire. For a long time, this meant he had all of their strengths and pretty much none of their weaknesses. And then, later in the comics, he got bitten by another kind of vampire and even drank Dracula's blood, which supercharged his powers to a new level. First up, he's incredibly strong. Strong enough to rip another vampire's head right off with his bare hands. He's also fast, able to move quicker than a normal person can even see. To him, a fight can look like it's happening in slow motion. Then there are his senses, which are completely off the charts. He can see in near total darkness, hear things a normal person can't, and his sense of smell is so good, it's been compared to Wolverine's. He can sniff out what's human and what's not from a distance. He even has a kind of sixth sense for spotting supernatural things that's invisible to the rest of us. He can take a serious beating, from massive explosions to crazy energy blasts, and just walk it off with a few burns. Plus, he's got a healing factor. It's not quite at the level of regrowing a whole arm, but he can heal from deep cuts and wounds in just a few hours, or even minutes. Wolverine himself said Blade's healing was almost as good as his own. Basically, he can fight all night long, because he barely gets tired. Now, here's what makes him a Daywalker. Sunlight is the key difference. It doesn't bother him at all. While most vampires either get crispy fried in the sun, Blade can walk around like it's nothing. So, what's the downside? Well, he still has the vampire's thirst for blood. This is his constant struggle. He needs it to survive. But it's a part of the very thing he's dedicated his life destroying. It's what makes him such a tortured hero. Daywalkers in popular culture. When you hear the word Daywalker, who's the first person that comes to mind? For most of us, it's one man, Blade. For decades, the biggest rule in vampire lore was that sunlight meant instant death. But the idea of a half-vampire who could walk in the sun didn't just break that rule. It blew the doors wide open for a whole new kind of story. This archetype has since appeared everywhere, completely changing how we see vampires in movies, TV, and games. It all starts with Blade. While the character first appeared in Marvel Comics in the 1970s, it was the 1998 movie starring Wesley Snipes that cemented the Daywalker in our collective imagination. This portrayal was revolutionary. It took the core idea of the folkloric Dhampir and injected it with a dose of 90s. After Blade, the Daywalker archetype exploded, branching out in all sorts of new directions. In anime and video games, you have characters like the stoic and mysterious vampire hunter D, or Castlevania's Alucard, who is the elegant son of Dracula who fights against his own father. Then, the idea hit the mainstream in a massive way, with books and TV shows. The Twilight series, for instance, created its own version where vampires didn't burn in the sun but sparkled, making them perfect, romantic leads. TV shows like The Vampire Diaries came up with a magical fix of using special rings that let vampires walk in the daylight. This small change had a huge impact, and it allowed vampires to be high school students and long-term protagonists, fully integrated into the human world. Weaknesses and limitations. Okay, so we've established that a Daywalker like Blade is basically a superhuman powerhouse. He's got the strength, the speed, the senses, and he can walk in the sun. So what's the catch? Can anything actually stop him? Yes, because a hero with no weaknesses is boring. And that's why storytellers gave Blade a few key vulnerabilities that make him so much more interesting. At the end of the day, Blade still has that one core weakness that connects him directly to the monsters he hunts. Just like a regular vampire, he needs blood to survive. So he came up with a workaround. He developed a special blue serum that he injects. Consider it a nutritious meal replacement that's even better for him than actual blood. One dose is usually enough to keep him going for a full 24 hours, even in heavy combat. The serum is his lifeline, but it's also a ticking clock. If he goes too long without it, he starts to get weak. His senses dull, his strength fades, and if he goes for more than a week without either the serum or blood, his self-control shatters. He loses the fight against his vampire side and is forced to attack a human to feed. If he goes too long without either, it could even kill him. But there's another, much stranger weakness that most people don't know about. It's a specific comic booky kind of weakness. Regular, everyday yellow sunlight is fine. He can have a picnic in the park, no problem. But for some reason, red sunlight can burn him. It's a very specific Achilles heel, but it's another great tool a writer can use to put him in a tough spot when you thought he was safe. Role as vampire hunters. So, what does a Daywalker actually do all day? When you're a half-vampire with none of their weaknesses, you have one career path, and that is hunting the monsters that made you. Think about Blade. His entire life is fueled by revenge against the vampire who killed his mother. That single tragic event turned him into a living weapon. For other Daywalker figures, it's more about a sense of duty, or should I say, a way to use their curse for good and protect a world that would never accept them. When it comes to fighting, Daywalker hunters blend old-school folklore with modern firepower. They know that classic weaknesses like silver, garlic, and wooden stakes actually work, but they don't stop there. They upgrade their arsenal with high-tech gadgets, like UV flashbang, injectable serums to keep their own thirst in check, and of course, custom-made bladed weapons. Their fighting style is usually a hybrid, just like them. Blade is the perfect example. He's a master of martial arts and swordsmanship, able to take on vampires in close quarters combat. But he's just as comfortable using a modified shotgun loaded with silver buckshot. Let's talk more about Blade here, to give you a better idea of what I'm talking about. It all starts on the streets of London, where a young Eric Brooks is taken in by a veteran vampire hunter named Jamal Afari. Afari teaches him everything he knows, and Eric, driven to avenge his mother, becomes Blade. His early years are defined by this singular mission, but he quickly learns he's not alone. he joins teams of hunters to take on Dracula himself. And in a brutal fight, he gets bitten by the vampire lord. His friends think he's turned, but Blade wakes up just in time, revealing his unique immunity to vampire bites. His main focus, however, is hunting down Deacon Frost, the vampire who killed his mother. This personal vendetta leads him to an unlikely partnership with Hannibal King, a private eye who also happens to be a vampire. Their hunt gets incredibly weird when Frost creates an evil vampire clone of Blade, leading to a bizarre showdown that solidifies Blade and King's friendship. After this, Blade's world blows wide open. He forms the Night Stalkers, a supernatural detective agency, and joins the Midnight Suns alongside Doctor Strange and Ghost Rider. He's no longer just hunting vampires. He's fighting demons like Lilith and protecting the world from dark magic. But the biggest change in his life comes when he's bitten by Morbius, the living vampire. This bite transforms him into the Daywalker. We know best, giving him all the vampire powers but cursing him with a bloodthirst he has to control with a serum. Just when you think it can't get crazier, he discovers his long-lost father, Lucas Cross, a vampire tangled in an ancient prophecy. Blade gets manipulated into a series of events that accidentally brings every single dead vampire back to life. From there, Blade officially levels up. He joins major teams, like Britain's MI-13, helps the X-Men fight off a global vampire invasion, and eventually becomes a full-fledged Avenger, helping them fight threats across the cosmos. He's fought literal gods, been forced to team up with Dracula for help, and was even recently possessed by Varney, the very first vampire, during a worldwide attack. Daywalkers in tabletop and role-playing games. You've watched the movies. You've read the comics. But what if you could actually be a Daywalker? Well, in the world of tabletop role-playing games like Dungeons & Dragons, you can. The idea of the Dhampir is a popular choice for players who want that dark, edgy hero with a tragic backstory. In Dungeons & Dragons, playing a Dhampir is all about being a perfect, self-contained monster hunter. You could have been changed by a weird experiment, a magical pact, or even a parasite living inside you. And your hunger doesn't have to be for blood. It could be for dreams, memories, or raw life force, which is a really cool creative hook. Mechanically, you get a package of awesome abilities. You're faster than normal. You can see in the dark, and you don't even need to breathe. You can literally walk up walls and hang from the ceiling, hands-free. And of course, you have a vampiric bite that you can use in a pinch to either heal yourself or give yourself a power-up for your next action. Now, if you want a less heroic and more tragic experience, you'd look at a game like Vampire: The Masquerade. In this world, Dhampirs are outcasts, caught between the human world that fears them and the ruthless vampire society that sees them as weak or an embarrassment. Instead of a cool set of powers for fighting monsters, your abilities are often more subtle, and the real game is about survival. You're constantly fighting your hunger and trying to find a place to belong in a world that has no room for you. Thematic significance. For centuries, these creatures have been a staple of horror, but they're so much more than just monsters. They're a mirror. They represent all the big contradictions we grapple with: life and death, good and evil, love and hate. And in modern stories, there's no figure who reflects our own complicated world better than the Daywalker. A character like Blade is a powerful symbol of what it means to be caught between two worlds. His very existence forces us to ask some really tough questions about identity, power, race, and what it means to belong. We have to understand that modern vampires aren't just spooky Transylvanian counts anymore. They've moved into our cities, and in a lot of ways, they've become more human. They're lonely, they feel guilt, and they're often shown as their own unique race or ethnic group, with their own history, culture, and internal politics. Give it a thought. In movies like Underworld, there's a race war between vampires and werewolves, all sparked by a forbidden interracial romance. This evolution is key, because by making vampires more human, storytellers can use them to explore real-world social issues. And one of the most powerful ways they do this is by connecting vampirism to ideas of race and power, especially in the case of a black vampire hunter like Blade. Blade is the most fascinating example of this. In his world, vampirism is used as a metaphor for whiteness and institutional power. The vampire society is obsessed with purebloods versus those who were turned, a hierarchy that mirrors real-world racist ideas about blood purity. They see themselves as a superior, evolved species, and they look down on humans as nothing more than cattle. The vampires even use the term Daywalker, like a racial slur, a way to mark him as a half-breed who doesn't truly belong anywhere. What makes Blade so powerful as a character is how he flips the script on old, tired stereotypes. He's a black man who embodies this in-between space, but instead of desperately trying to assimilate into the dominant, powerful vampire society, he completely rejects it. He chooses his humanity. He sides with the oppressed, not the oppressors. It's about denying the heritage that offers him privilege, and instead fighting for the world he believes in. Marvelous verdict. So why does a character like Blade, a Daywalker caught between two worlds, resonate so strongly with audiences? It's because modern fantasy isn't just about escaping reality anymore. It's about exploring it. We live in a world where identity is complex and messy. Many of us feel like we're caught between different cultures, social groups, or ideologies. Blade gives us a hero who embodies that struggle. His story offers a fantasy of empowerment for anyone who has ever felt like an outsider. He takes his stigmatized identity and turns it into his greatest strength. From ancient folklore to Blade himself, the Daywalker is the symbol of the hero caught between two worlds. What's your favorite Daywalker story? Let me know in the comments. And don't forget to subscribe for more such videos. And if you liked our content, don't forget to leave a like and subscribe to us if you haven't already. Have a good one and be safe. Thanks, everyone.